Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. You know what to do. Please do me a favour like you always do. Hit the like button for me on the video. The like game is strong with you lot. Always up 800-900 likes, over 1,000 likes at times. It's insane. I love it. I very much appreciate it. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Nearly 15,700 people have gone before. Join them. Hit the subscribe button. It's free to do. Show some support for the channel. And whilst you're at it, hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. And we've got kind of two stories. One interesting out of the blue transfer rumour that is coming from a publication in Portugal called Ebola. And from what I gather, they aren't particularly clickbaity. They apparently are rather sincere in their stories generally. I don't know, I've got no idea. Just going off of what I've been reading on Twitter. And that is regarding their Porto 26-year-old winger, PEPE. Not the Arsenal PEPE, not the 40-year-old PEPE, the 26-year-old Porto player PEPE. We'll talk about him in a minute because it's an interesting story. I'm pretty certain I've done a video on him previously, but I couldn't find it this morning, and so I don't know if I'm going to contradict something I might have said prior in the previous video, but I've certainly done all of my due diligence. I spent an hour this morning looking through the Y Scout, getting to know this player in a bit more detail. Morning guys, how you doing? And if it's true, Bugsy, come here please. If it's true, then we'll get to my thoughts on it. But before we do that, we've got to talk a little bit about Celso, because we're 7 days away from the end of the window. I've been saying for the last 4 or 5 days now, 11 players in or out are supposed to happen. A player a day, more than a player a day, a lot more than a player a day. It's now almost 2 players a day if we're going to get through all of the various departures and then make room for 2 players at least to come in to give us that kind of balance in certain positions of the squad. And one of those players that we didn't think really, or I think most people didn't think, was going to be on the chopping block after a pretty solid pre-season was Celso. However, reports out yesterday suggesting that he's unhappy that Ange Postecoglou had made him promises around getting game minutes in the first 2 games, and he didn't have them, he didn't get any, and he feels like he wants out already. And I guess that reminds me, it's reminiscent of the previous version of Celso, who seems like his personality is a little bit of an issue. Sometimes he can be quite moody. I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but I feel like I have in the back of my mind a memory of him maybe being a little bit of a bad influence with other Spanish-speaking contingent like Serge Reguilon, those guys disappearing off. Was it during COVID or before COVID? You know, rocking off to Paris overnight and things. I'm not entirely sure, can't recall, but generally speaking, there's always been that kind of, is he a happy player, happy person type vibe. And I guess he would be if he was playing in a system that he likes and that suits him. But if you're playing behind James Maddison, then are you going to get the minutes that you command or demand? And I don't know. To me, I wish the window was open for another 2 more weeks so that he could get the minutes against Bournemouth and play against Fulham, and then we could see how he feels after that. You know, and I think that there is a way that you can juggle the two, because it's always going to be difficult to have 2 players for every position without giant leaps down in quality if everybody's demanding minutes and you're only playing 1 game a week. That is just the consequence. It's a difficult situation to be in. We spoke about it last night on Henry Wright's show with Sava and Henry. I don't know how you solve for that problem of trying to keep the quality up and everybody happy. It's a dilemma. Anyway, the stories out today are that he wants to go back to, was it the club? Celta Vigo, was it? I can't even think what the club it was. My mind's gone blank. He wants to go back on loan with, you know, an option to buy, and that club is trying to figure it out. Sorry guys, I can't think what club it is. It's a club in Spain. And but Tottenham, if they are going to lose him, want there to be an obligation to buy at the end, and the decision will be made in the coming 3 or 4 days. I don't know. It's another obstacle, another hurdle that is just an unnecessary, unhappy one to have to deal with. Because I felt like we could sit there and say, at least our central midfield is okay, with Maddison and Lo Celso, with Sarr and Bentancur, with Bissouma and Skippy or Højbjerg, right? Like, yeah, that's not the end of the world if that has to stay like that for the rest of the season. But looks like there's more problems on the horizon. So we'll see where we go with that. But to me, if there is any issues and he is going to go, then maybe it makes more sense to understand this story that is emerging, that Tottenham have put in a bid of 45 million euros plus 15 in add-ons for Porto utility player PEPE, 26-year-old player, Brazil international with Italian citizenship. 4 goals and 6 or 7 assists last season. He can play as a right winger, as a left winger, as a support striker, as a left forward, as a right forward, and as a right back or a right wing back. So he's quite versatile in his positional aptitude. And look, like I said, I spent a long time looking through him, familiarising myself with him. I'm pretty sure I did do a video on him before, but I couldn't find it when I was searching earlier. I do like the player. I think he's very tricky. He's a good dribbler, likes to drive at players. He's got a very good cross on him, not afraid to have a finish when asked to play centrally. He can play with both feet, so you can definitely invert him on either side and ask him to do a bunch of different stuff. He's not exactly the same as anything we have, which is good for that kind of options, offering something that's unpredictable. If you're going to compare him to anyone we've got on the width, I'd say he's more like Manuel Solomon. He's also very small. He's only 5'7". So again, another issue with a team that can't defend aerially anyway. I'm not a fan of having all these small players personally, but look, as a player, what I do like about him is his unpredictability. He's always up for something creative and innovative in his passing. Doesn't always pick the easy option. Doesn't pick the obvious option either, which I think, if it works, then it looks fantastic because you're creating space. If there's a runner and the defence are presuming that Pepe's going to pass it to him, instead he'll do something different and pull it back or flick it over or do a back heel or something interesting that, like I say, when it works and it looks brilliant. When it doesn't, it will be very frustrating. From what I've seen, I very much like him. He's got a good weight of passing and he's strong, deceptively strong. He can fight off the kind of offensive duels. He also, for me, is a very good reader of the game. I watched it. His off-the-ball work is pretty impressive for someone that's given generally an offensive role. He's always watching what's going on and anticipates where the ball is going to be placed by the opposition and tries to get back there and help out. I am a fan of his. Defensively, his stats are not spectacular, but then they wouldn't be. In terms of what he does with the ball, he's got the stats in terms of like his passing or his distributions are about on par with the sort of top tier or the kind of up there tier of players in his position. He gets about 80% of his passing accurate. He gets about 70% of his dribbles are successful. 50% of his crosses get to their target. But he's up there. He's competitive and a very good player. To me, though, I just don't know if he is. I wouldn't be against it if that's the way we're going to go. If Ange has identified that we need more options on the width, then I think he does provide something that we don't have. He's a different type of dribbler than Solomon. He's very direct and very kind of like the acceleration and the dropping of the kind of shoulder. This guy's more just kind of can run at pace and cadence and trickery. Good balance on him, but he's also kind of more, I think, apt at getting the ball into the right areas in the box. For me though, if we're going to do that and have that sort of player, you need someone in the box who's going to finish it, and you know how I feel about Richarlison, guys. Just don't think he's the right guy. What I would say is, if you're going to spend 45 million and 15 million on a player like him from Porto, I don't think it makes as much sense as trying to go back to Sporting and pay probably an extra 15 million, 10 to 15 million, and getting a player who's 1 year younger, but for me, is the real deal, can play on the left, can play on the right, can play in the centre, more importantly, can absolutely fill in behind Maddison. If Maddison gets injured, he can step in a world where we've lost Lo Celso. He's far better defensively, he's ridiculously strong, brilliant passer of the ball. He's up there in the top 5 percentile, top 10 percentile of absolutely everything that you would expect of him, and things you wouldn't for players in his position. And that is Pedro Gonçalves of Sporting. A lot of players have been linked, a lot of teams have been linked with him over the last, I don't know, since January. Obviously he put his name out there when he smashed home, I think it was the winner against Arsenal at the Emirates in the Europa League quarter-final. For me, he's a wonderful talent. I've obviously been keeping an eye on him for a long time. I think he's spectacular. Whether or not we could compete to get him, I don't know. Why teams like Chelsea aren't looking at him to fill the gaps that they need in their creative spots, I'm not sure. Maybe Sporting are just a very difficult club to deal with, and perhaps at this late stage of the window, getting a deal done with that chairman who's more difficult to work with than Daniel Levy is probably unlikely. Maybe he signed a new contract. I'm not even sure if that's a situation as well. Maybe there's something there that is why there's kind of no substantial links. But if we are going to go back to Portugal to find some creative width, and you've got to consider that if Real Betis, that's who Lo Celso, I knew you're working somewhere in there. Real Betis is the team that might be interested in Lo Celso alongside Barcelona. So if Lo Celso does depart, I don't know, for me, in Gonçalves, you have a player that can play pretty much anywhere in the front line and would solve a hell of a lot of issues. He won't have any issues getting minutes, and then you have, a quality player that can fit anywhere on the pitch and add massive amounts of value. And in terms of goal contributions, the difference is significant. Pepe, I think last season was 4 goals, 7 assists. Over the course of his career, he's got a goal every 4 games. But in the most recent couple of years, we're talking 4 goals a season and 5 or 6 assists. He's that kind of 5 and 5 type player, which is fine. But if we're looking for ways to, to grab back the 30 goals that we're losing from Harry Kane, I'm not sure he's the guy. Gonçalves, on the other hand, is up there in the very best in terms of goal contributions relative to wingers, relative to attacking midfielders. I think last year he had something like 30 goal and assists over the course of his season, something like maybe 28, 14 and 15, something like that. Just a world-class player, in my opinion, or up there. Maybe not world-class is a difficult term to define, but one of the top-tier players in Portugal. So, I don't know. For me, Pepe, I'll be okay with it. I'm on board it. I trust Ange. If that's what Ange wants, so be it. If that is a move that the data has popped up and said that that's what we should be looking for, then so be it. As I said yesterday, though, if we're also looking at Brennan Johnson, then I'm not sure if we're really using the data, because as I showed you, in terms of passing, Brennan Johnson is the worst in the top 5 leagues in his position. So we shall see. Scratch Brennan Johnson off the list, please, Tottenham. Scratch Jonathan David off the list, please, Tottenham. Go and get Orban if you fancy him, if you fancy taking a punt. If you really want to go for Pepe, I'm behind it. But for me, it makes more sense if you can convince the guy to come, and if you can deal with that chairman to get Pedro Gonçalves out of Portugal. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Wish you a wonderful, happy day. I will see you later on for a live stream. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.